There are 6 classes of people in the United States. And if you are a public association, you cannot discriminate against these 6. Past Commodore Joe Tringali, coming to you again from the Academy of Yachting. Now, last week we talked about the Hoynums and the Yahoos, and how the Hoynums didn't want the Yahoos in their club, even though they were meeting in a restaurant and they were doing all sorts of wonderful charitable works. And the Yahoos really weren't much different from the Hoynums anymore. You know, they started out different maybe in some respects, but as time went on, it really wasn't any significant difference. You know, they all had sort of upper middle class jobs, they all went to work in the same places, they all drove the same kind of cars. Could the Hoynums keep Yahoos out? The answer depends on whether or not the Hoynums had a private club. What is a private club? It is an association that is distinctly private. That means it meets on private property. It gets no tax advantage. It keeps a very, very strict control on its membership. It does not publicize it doesn't go out looking for members, okay? It doesn't publicize membership on bulletin, billboards and newspapers and all that kind of stuff. That's a private club. Now, back about 1983, the United States Power Squadrons had a provision in their national bylaws that you could join the squadrons if you first of all passed the introductory course, which by the way was a lot more extensive than the current safe boating course. But if you passed that course and you were male, 18 years of age or over, you could join. You could be invited to join and you could accept. That, by the way, applied to me. I've been a member of USPS for well over 50 years. I served on the national board. I held the rank of rear commander for a time. I was chairman of one of the national committees. I love the Power Squadron. So what I'm about to tell you is not a knock on the organization. It's simply to show you how the law operates. 2 ladies took the Power Squadron course and they passed, and they said they wanted to join. And the squadrons, by the way, that's the official name is United States Power Squadrons, plural. So anyway, the squadron said, no, you can't. You can't join because you're not male. You don't have the necessary anatomy. You qualify in every other way. I mean, you passed the course, you understand the program, you did everything else that everybody has to do except for one thing. You're not male. The ladies sued USPS, and the case wound up in the New York Court of Appeals. The New York Court of Appeals is one of the best appellate courts in the United States. It's an amazing, intense experience when you argue there. It's an ornate room. I won't even try to describe the room, but you're there in front of a panel of 7 judges, and if you're lucky, you can get maybe 3 or 4 sentences into your presentation before they start asking questions about your case. And sometimes they interrupt each other with questions. And sometimes they say things like, before you answer that, answer this. So if you're going to go to New York Court of Appeals, you better be ready. The same thing is true of the Supreme Court, but we won't go there for now. Anyway, The case got to the New York Court of Appeals, and the Power Squadrons raised three defenses, the big three. Number one, we're a private club. We cannot possibly be a public accommodation because we're not an accommodation. You know, we meet in restaurants. We meet in wherever we can. We're not an accommodation. The court said, listen, an accommodation is more than just a place. It's also a group. Okay? It's a much more expansive definition than you're trying to give it. Number two, defense number two. Yeah, well, we're private. And the New York Court of Appeals, and by the way, if you really want to understand private versus public, get a copy of this opinion. In fact, if you contact me, I'll send you a copy of the opinion, or I'll tell you where to get it. But they went through everything that the squadrons do. And they said things like, private clubs don't put up booths at boat shows. Private clubs don't teach public courses. Private clubs don't go out looking for geodesic survey marks, as an assist to the government. Private clubs don't do courtesy vessel examinations. Private clubs pretty much stay private and mind their own business. You guys don't. Therefore, you're public. And finally, the squadrons, now you're at the end of the rope, and they said, yeah, well, we're protected by the First Amendment. First Amendment, by God, we have a constitutional right to associate. And the court said, that would have been a good argument back about 1930. But it's much too late in the day to attack civil rights legislation. This is 1983. You're going to have to come up with a better reason. Why are these ladies being excluded? Well, they couldn't come up with a better reason, and therefore they were held to be a public accommodation. Now, the same thing happened the following year in a case called Roberts versus J.C.'s. This case went to the United States Supreme Court, and it involved the same issue. Can ladies join the J.C.'s? And the J.C.'s went through the same silly arguments, Well, we're a private organization. And the United States Supreme Court said, wait a minute, you're a private organization? You're soliciting members all over the place. You even invite women into the J.C.'s for social events, for all sorts of things. How can you possibly say that they're not qualified to be members? And the J.C.'s, of course, said, same old thing, well, we have a constitutional right to associate with those that we want to associate with. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, that's true, except for this. And here's what I want you to remember until next week, because next week we're going to get into the exceptions. Taken in alphabetical order: age, gender, national origin, race, religion, and now sexual orientation. If a member of one of those classes wants to join your association, and you are, for all practical purposes, open to the public, you cannot use one of those reasons to exclude that person. Those are protected classes. Now, I guess I'm being told this class is over. We'll see you next week, and I'll give you the name of the class that's not protected. Wait till you hear it. Until then, the clock on the wall tells me it's time to go. See you next week.